Welcome to another episode of Disposable Cooking. I'm your chef, the Disposable Reviewer. On today's episode, we'll be making a breakfast item. And what better breakfast item than the omelet? I could probably name a few better breakfast items, but today, it's the omelet. So, what you'll need: eggs, a spatula, a stabby thing, a hammer, a screwdriver, duct tape, another hammer, or the same... Looks like the eggs that I got were a little... runny. Welcome to Disposable Minutes. I'm your host, the Disposable Reviewer. Today we're going to be wasting some minutes on Fantastic Dizzy. Before we get into that though, I got a checklist of things that I can't do on this episode. Let's see, number 1, don't make egg puns. I don't see how they don't expect me not to. God, I hope that's not how this episode goes. Anyway, Fantastic Dizzy was released on a bunch of systems, but I'm only going to be talking about the Genesis version. You play as this egg guy, Dizzy. His egg girlfriend Daisy has been kidnapped by an evil non-egg wizard Zax. And that's the story. This game is kinda like a point-and-click adventure game. You get a thing, you see if you can solve a problem by taking thing to said problem, which then gives you another thing to use on a different problem. It's an endless cycle of solutions and problems, just like real life, only with more eggs. I'll give the game credit for showing the player how the game works as soon as the game starts. You got Mr. Floaty Hand over here telling you to grab a key near the ceiling of Dizzy's house. Once you get up there, Floaty Hands shows you what button you need to press, then the button to open your inventory and get a description of your items. This says Dizzy's door key, because you know, he needs to use a key if he ever needs to leave his house. Pretty sure that's not how houses work. If he locks the door and the key ain't in his house, well, guess he'll die inside. And you know what happens when the egg dies? We just end up in a rotten situation, that's what. Anyway, the game goes on to show you how to leave the house. Did you notice these stars? Well, don't do what I did and ignore them, because they are actually really important. They're so important that the game never mentions how important they are, and the fact that you need them in order to beat the game. Yeah, when I made it near to the end of the game, there was this laser preventing me from going forward. At least at this point, it told me that I did need the stars, and fortunately I had an idea of where I'd left some stars, but I imagine it would be super annoying if someone played to this point without keeping track of any stars they neglected. It wouldn't be too much of an issue if the game was more generous with lives and health. You can't damage enemies, you can only avoid them, which tends to not be that hard. It's mostly just waiting and jumping. Except for these stupid rats. Every other bad guy has a simple predictable pattern, except for these jerks. They're hard because they exist on a 3D plane as opposed to anything else. Everyone's living in the second dimension while these rats over here figured out the secret of the universe and are living in the third dimension. You get hurt by simply touching an enemy, and you'll be continuously hurt for as long as you're touching. A quick touch won't hurt that much. A quick touch won't hurt you that much, baby. That's not cool. A quick touch won't hurt you much, but prolonged touching will kill you. Health can be restored by picking up fruit scattered throughout the game. However, these fruits are limited, so if you're just picking them up as you go, you won't be able to heal later in the game. Trust me, that's something I wish I would have known sooner. And that brings up the lives. You start with 3, and I found 3 extra lives in the game. Once those are gone, it's game over. And game over means restarting the game from the beginning. That means recollecting all the stars and resolving all the puzzles. I'd just like to point out the extra lives come in the form of a slide puzzle that you need to solve. Once you do, a wizard shows up and clones Dizzy. Now for me, I just gotta say that makes the most sense in terms of getting an extra life in a game. Oh my goodness, I just figured out why the house can lock people in. Dizzy can keep his clones locked inside the house, only sending him out to solve dangerous puzzles for him. I'm on to you, Dizzy, you freaking egg. The world in Fantastic Dizzy has a lot of different and nice looking areas. You can see the treetop village all the eggs live in, which I guess makes sense because birds keep their eggs in trees. Although it also doesn't make sense because when an egg falls it breaks, but whatever. You have the port town, which has its very own pirate ship. That's how you know it's authentic. The pirate captain makes you walk the plank at some point, and that leads to a timed minigame. You just use the bubbles to get to the surface, but don't forget the stars or else you'll be coming back here later. There's some scuba gear that lets you explore the ocean and flippers to help you swim. By the way, The water gear doesn't help you in the bubble minigame for some reason. There are a few other minigames. You have one where Dizzy is riding in a minecart and you gotta guide him down the right path. Part of this requires some memorization, which feels kinda cheap since you instantly die if you run into any hazard. Apparently Dizzy is going fast enough that hitting something cracks him and probably scrambles his little brain, which is one of the few times you don't want your eggs scrambled. Another game has you breaking into a castle using a crossbow, which was really unexpected considering that you've been pretty merciful to all the other enemies. Be ready to do a lot of backtracking. You only have 3 inventory slots with no way of expanding the number. So part of the game is keeping track of what you've collected and where you may have left a thing. This can be pretty darn frustrating if you get to a hard area only to find out that you don't have enough empty slots. It hurts even more when you know what item you need to solve a puzzle, but you left it back at your house. Or worse yet, you get said item from your house, backtrack all the way back just to realize that that item won't solve the puzzle. Had there been a way to defeat enemies, especially those stupid rats, and if you could skip redoing some minigames, like the minecart one, it wouldn't be too bad. And don't forget the stars! The stars appear in the minecart minigame, which means that you have to play it multiple times. The bubble minigame might be doable in one go, but it's risky, so you'll probably be back. The game is interesting though. I'd say give it a try if you can. Just like in any puzzle game like this, there are a few jumps in logic that make the game feel a bit unfair, but for the most part the puzzles seem pretty simple and fair. Though the backtracking kinda makes it unfair. But you know, fair and unfair and an egg are all part of a balanced breakfast. Fantastic Dizzy for the Sega Genesis gets the scrambled rank. Figure that out. Also, I'm not getting up and walking out the door because I'm sitting down. Figure that out too.